Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. Larry Kudlow of Kudlow Reports at CNBC. And Kudlow Radio on the Weekend is my colleague and co-host. The market had a soggy day, but John Paulson always has a good day. And we're joined immediately by John Paulson's watcher, the man who wrote The Greatest Trade Ever, Greg Zuckerman of the Wall Street Journal. We've asked Greg here tonight to do double duty. First, to comment on the sogginess of the market and its reaction to some big numbers, but also keenly to comment on a fact just recently released, in fact, within the last 40 hours, from the Federal Election Commission. This came out Sunday. A Schedule A of a super PAC entitled Restore Our Future Incorporated. These are big check writers for a PAC that is closely associated with Mitt Romney, leading in the presidential contest for the Republican nomination. Greg, a very good evening to you. Jumping out at me on this list of very well-to-do people writing checks between $10,000, $500,000, and $1 million is the number one check writer for the year, January 28th, 2011, John Paulson, running the hedge fund and his own money, chiefly in gold, the man who made $1 billion in one day, in your book, for February of 2007 by betting against the housing market before it collapsed. He wrote $1 million check to Mitt Romney. Is this a surprise that he is supporting Mitt Romney? Good evening, Greg.
Good evening. Good to be with you guys. What I find really interesting, what I take from this, is that hedge fund managers like Paulson often sort of hedge themselves when it comes to donations to politicians, just like they do with their own portfolio. So John Paulson has always given to both parties, and he's something of a moderate politically. And he's voted Republican, and he's supported some Republican candidates, but he's also supported Democrats. For him to come out early and strongly for Mitt Romney is quite interesting to me. It does sort of suggest, and I think it's the case, people are searching for an alternative to President Obama on Wall Street, whether it'll be Romney or even I talked to some bigwigs who like other people even, but they're coming out early for alternatives.
Greg, did Paulson, was he for Obama last time?
That's a good question. I don't think he was vocal. I'm not sure who he voted for, but he was among many on Wall Street, I would argue, who wanted to give him a chance, they were optimistic, they were hopeful, and some of whom have been a little more discouraged. And frankly, many of them, when you push them, and I'm talking about guys like Daniel Loeb, who runs a hedge fund, Third Point Capital, when you push them as to what they're disappointed about, they don't really have too many concrete examples, quite frankly. There's sort of a tone that they're unhappy with, but, you know, it's not like taxes have gone higher.
Has Paulson come out publicly, or I know this is from the records, but has Paulson actually said anything publicly, like I'm for Romney?
No, he hasn't, nor do I expect him to. When you manage $38 billion, you don't want to be too vocal. I mean, some have, like Mark Lazary, who's a Democrat, and he's been a supporter of Obama, and before that, President Clinton. But it's a little dangerous if you're managing that big a firm to be too vocal. You can be supportive and in the background and be instrumental and helpful. And he has played a role, Paulson has played a role in other campaigns, in congressional campaigns in Connecticut and elsewhere, but he hasn't come out vocally.
Greg, you cannot hide $1 million check under a bushel. You know, you take my point, Greg. This is a big, splashy check that he's written here. It's matched only by one other in this list of Restore Our Future. And it's got to be part of the Romney pitch that John Paulson, Mr. Goldbug, wrote me $1 million check.
Yeah, although I'm not sure it resonates necessarily with voters. I'm not sure it's a selling point. Hey, the guy who made $20 billion betting against the housing market is supporting me.
It sounds to me like David Axelrod is leaning forward into the speaker right now, Mr. Zuckerman.
Yeah, man, I don't think anybody wants to fess up to it. That wasn't my question. Greg, do you know if he's given to any other of the Republican field?
Not among the presidential candidates that I know of. He's given to some congressional candidates in the past.
I don't really think Michelle Bachmann is his kind of.
Now,
I wouldn't think so, no.
Now,
Who knows?
The question of Mr. Paulson giving to Mitt Romney, and there's also two Bain Capital guys here. There's Louis Moore Bacon of Moore Capital. There's some big hitters here. These are the millionaires and billionaires, Greg. These are the people that the president speaks against routinely. You think they're taking it personally?
I think some are, yes. And again, it's more of a tone, and they feel like they're being targeted. I don't think many can point to actual steps that President Obama has taken against them, and some can say that they're just kind of whining and complaining and being overly sensitive. But yeah, no, people are looking for an alternative to Obama, and frankly, Mitt Romney, there are roots there. I mean, John Paulson got a start as a consultant in Bain Consulting, sort of cousins of Bain Capital, which is what Mitt Romney started. I don't know if there's a connection between the two, but they do have roots, shared roots together, Bain roots. You can make some arguments that he's the perfect candidate for many on Wall Street because he obviously knows about the world of finance, is sympathetic to the people from the world of finance, and if he can get through the primaries, he could win. He's got a better shot than many others.
It'll be very interesting, Greg, to see if Rick Perry, Governor Rick Perry of Texas, makes a campaign issue out of all of Romney's Wall Street money, whether Perry runs against Wall Street and against Romney in the primaries. I can see that happening.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's sort of a little bit of a double-edged sword, but maybe in the primaries you make that argument, and then when everybody starts, the same Wall Street guys start backing Perry in a general election, you run the other way.
Mr. Perry has been a very good fundraiser in his two elected terms and his inherited term, the last 10 years in office. And there's a list of the people he raises money from. I don't recall seeing a lot of these millionaires and billionaires on Wall Street writing these tickets.
I don't think they know him yet, frankly.
No.
But you guys know better than I do. He's a very strong candidate. You talk to people and on the Democratic side, and they're worried about him. So I don't think the Wall Street guys really know. I don't think they know a lot of the candidates yet. I mean, Tim Pawlenty of Minnesota was somebody who was very impressive to a number of private equity executives that I talked to, and they were just sort of getting to know him. They met him at a fundraiser, and they wrote him a nice check.
As he sinks in the polls. This is Restore Our Future. I want to emphasize this. This is a super PAC. That means you can write as big a check as you want, as often as you want. This $12 million from 90 names was raised in the first half of the year. We can presume there'll be more of this. Larry, does this mean that Mitt Romney has taken a lead that cannot be caught by others because he's gotten so many of the big check writers already?
No, it doesn't mean that, but I keep telling you, John, that Romney's a very strong candidate.
I have a question.
I have a question. Beating up on the poor guy.
I do beat up on him because I think having John Paulson write you $1 million check is a question you're going to have to answer on the stage.
Look, John Paulson is taking a fraction of his gold winnings and contributing it to Romney.
Yes, right.
I may be wrong, but I think actually John Paulson found that $1 million in the couch.
Yes, all right. Greg, we must attend to the market today because though it's a fleeting story, it's an exciting fleeting story. Down, what is it, more than 5% now in 8 days, right, Larry? And the decline is not because of the debt deal in Washington. It's because some ugly numbers are being reported.
Well, I don't know that. I'm interested in what Greg has to say. Greg, what caused this?
Honestly, I think it's people were distracted from the difficult economic period we're in. Call it a soft patch, call it more, and now they're refocusing on it. And it's not just here. I mean, we're very focused domestically, but Europe got rocked today. Spreads on Italian bonds were really soared out there. It's troublesome patch for everybody. So, and obviously, you know as well as I do, the economic numbers, the last quarter's performance, ISM a couple days ago. So my sense is people, once again, are refocusing on this economy and are quite disappointed.
Yeah, the double dip scenario is alive and well. Do you think the Fed's going to ease QE3?
That's the irony, right? So we worked so hard to finally rein in some spending, and then, yes, today there's talk again about QE3. Maybe they don't call it QE3. Maybe they do something else. I frankly think that probably keeps us from plunging too much because people start talking about it again. You know, it was just, a few months ago people were talking about exit strategy for the Fed, and you don't hear that anymore.
I mean, consumer spending has basically been flat to down for 3 straight months, Greg. That's very rare. Even in a recession, consumer spending seldom falls, and now suddenly it's falling.
Yeah, it's not so unhealthy, frankly. I mean, consumers had too much debt, had terrible balance sheets, and it's going to take time. It's just going to take time. You know, I talk to a lot of private equity executives, and they own companies, and they'll tell you, frankly, how they're doing and what they're seeing. And they say that B2C, companies that sell, are doing so poorly, but if it's company to company, C2C, then they're doing quite well. So company balance sheet is actually pretty strong.
Well, I just wonder, you think the markets are getting oversold here?
We're not quite oversold, but we're just flat on the year. So things are cheaper, but it's not bargain level yet.
I mean, have you ever seen a market fall this much with such good profits?
Well, that's prospectively we look, obviously, and people worry. I mean, you know, unemployment could be rough numbers coming up, and yes, profits have been good, but you know what people worry about, profit margins a little too so wide right now and juicy that they can't last.
And Greg, the detail here: how's Paulson's gold bet doing?
You know what? The guy's having problems in all kinds of different areas, but gold's doing great for him, and he's got most of his own money in gold. So, you know, one of his funds was down 20% on the year as of just a week or two ago, but gold is bailing him out once again, just like it did last year. So as we all know, gold is soaring today. It's been soaring lately, and he's got much of his own money in gold.
And Larry, that gold soaring, that's anticipation of QE3?
Yeah, that's what I think, John. That's just what I think.
Right. Larry, explain that quickly. Gold?
Well, just because if the Fed starts printing more money by buying bonds, that money is, bad money, and people want to seek a safe haven in gold, either for the protect against the dollar or to protect against inflation, or both, for that matter. So I'm looking at the gold signal as a QE3 signal.
Larry Kudlow of CNBC's Kudlow Reports, Greg Zuckerman of the Wall Street Journal, also the author of The Greatest Trade Ever, and John Paulson, the gold bug. His bet on gold is flying, and if you count on John Paulson as a seer, his bet on Mitt Romney is a solid one. $1 million check to a super PAC for Mitt Romney, January 28th, 2011. I'm John Batchelor.